On the morning of January 11, 2013, students began arriving at a high school in the small city of Valdosta, Georgia, expecting an ordinary Friday. Hallways filled with conversations about weekend plans, lockers slammed shut, and the sounds of a normal school bell. The sounds of another ordinary day echoed through the building. But within hours, that quiet morning would take an unexpected turn.
Into one of the most controversial and emotionally charged death investigations in modern American history. Hidden.
Inside a rolled-up wrestling mat in the school's gymnasium was the body of a 17-year-old student named Kendrick Johnson. What investigators would initially describe as a tragic accident would soon become the center of a nationwide debate, involving allegations of foul play, disputed forensic findings, conflicting expert opinions, social media campaigns, and years of legal battles.
More than a decade later, people across the United States continue asking the same haunting question.
What really happened to Kendrick Johnson? Was this simply a heartbreaking accident, or is there a deeper story
that has never been fully uncovered? To understand why this case continues to divide investigators, legal experts, journalists,
and the public, we have to begin with the young man at the center of it all.
Kendrick Johnson wasn't known for trouble. Friends described him as outgoing, respectful, and athletic. He loved sports,
especially football and basketball, and he dreamed of building a future beyond his hometown. Teachers remembered a student
who could make people laugh with his easygoing personality. Family members spoke about a son and brother who cared
deeply for those around him and always tried to lift the spirits of the people he loved.
Like countless teenagers across the country, he was focused on school, sports, friendships, and the everyday moments that shape adolescence.
High school life. Nothing about January 10, 2013 suggested it would be the final full day of his life. Security cameras captured students moving through the school as classes changed throughout the afternoon. Kendrick attended his classes, as usual, joking with classmates and participating in the routine activities that thousands of students experience every day.
According to investigators, sometime after the final class period, Kendrick entered the school's old gymnasium. The gym was used
by various athletic teams and contained dozens of large wrestling mats standing upright against the wall.
These mats, each weighing hundreds of pounds, were rolled into tight cylinders and stored vertically. Female students had reportedly
developed a habit of placing personal belongings, including shoes and gym clothes, inside the hollow center of the mats to keep them out of sight during athletic activities. Investigators later concluded that Kendrick had also been using one of those mats to store a pair of athletic shoes. What happened next would become the central question. One of the most closely examined aspects of the investigation centered on the official reconstruction. According to investigators, the sequence of events began when into the narrow opening at the top of one of the vertically stored mats. Because the opening was only
about 14 inches wide, investigators believed he climbed partially into the mat head first in an effort to reach
the shoes at the bottom. They concluded that he became trapped upside down, unable to free himself.
As blood pooled toward his head due to the inverted position, investigators determined that he died from positional asphyxia,
a condition in which body positioning prevents normal breathing and blood circulation. But while that explanation would eventually
become the official finding, many people, including an African-American Kendrick's family, would question whether such a scenario was even possible.
Those questions would only grow louder after the discovery of his body. The following day, January 11, students reported that Kendrick was missing after friends and family had been unable to contact him overnight. School officials began searching the campus. Eventually, someone looked inside the old gymnasium. At first glance, nothing appeared unusual. The large wrestling mats stood in neat rows against the wall. But when someone peered into the opening of one particular mat, they saw something horrifying. A pair of legs protruded from deep inside the rolled-up mat. Emergency responders were immediately. Although this became the official conclusion, many people continued to question whether that explanation fully accounted for the available evidence. With his arms pinned against his sides, the discovery stunned everyone involved. news spread rapidly throughout Valdosta. Students, teachers, parents, and local residents struggled to comprehend how a teenager could die in such an unusual position inside a school building. Investigators secured the gymnasium and began processing the scene. Detectives photographed the mat, measured the opening, documented the surrounding area, and reviewed surveillance footage from cameras throughout the school. They also searched for signs of a struggle, evidence of forced entry, or indications that another person had been involved.
According to investigators, they found no physical evidence suggesting an assault had occurred inside the gym. Surveillance footage reviewed
During the investigation reportedly showed Kendrick entering the gym area, but there was no camera position directly inside, the section where the wrestling mats were stored. That gap in video coverage would later become one of the many issues discussed by people who questioned the official findings. As word of Kendrick's death reached his family,
Shock quickly turned into heartbreak. His parents, relatives, and friends could not understand how a healthy, athletic teenager
could become trapped in a wrestling mat without anyone noticing. The circumstances seemed so unusual that almost immediately doubts began to surface. Those doubts intensified after the first autopsy concluded that Kendrick's cause of death was positional, asphyxia, and classified the manner of death as accidental. While investigators believed the physical evidence supported that conclusion, Kendrick's family was unconvinced. They believed important questions remained unanswered and insisted that a more thorough investigation was necessary. Their determination to seek additional answers would eventually transform this local tragedy into one of the most closely watched
and fiercely debated death investigations in America, drawing national media attention, independent forensic reviews, civil lawsuits, and years
of public controversy that continue to this day. In the weeks ahead, every piece of evidence, from surveillance footage, forensic reports to witness statements and expert opinions, would be examined, challenged, defended, and debated, leaving behind a case where certainty proved far more difficult to achieve than anyone could have imagined. As investigators continued examining the scene,
they focused on reconstructing Kendrick Johnson's final known movements inside the school. Detectives reviewed hours of surveillance footage
from cameras positioned throughout the campus, hoping to identify exactly where he had gone after his last class. Investigators also examined whether anyone else had been present. According to the official findings, the available footage showed the gymnasium by himself. Investigators stated they found no video showing another person entering the mat storage area with him.
However, because the section where the wrestling mats were stored was not covered by surveillance cameras, there was no
direct visual record of what happened once Kendrick entered that space. That missing piece of the timeline would become
one of the most debated aspects of the entire case. For investigators, the absence of footage did not outweigh
the physical evidence they believed pointed toward an accidental death. For Kendrick's family and many supporters, it left a gap large enough for unanswered questions to persist. Crime scene investigators carefully examined the wrestling mat itself. The mat was, "Hi there, we're introducing a new feature where I can read this aloud in a natural, human-like voice."
In the center. At the bottom of the mat, investigators recovered a pair of athletic shoes they believed belonged
to Kendrick. This discovery became a cornerstone of the official explanation. Detectives concluded that he had likely climbed head first
into the mat to retrieve the shoes, slipped deeper than expected, and became trapped. Because his arms were pinned
close to his body inside the confined space, investigators believed he could not generate enough leverage to pull himself back out. The official autopsy concluded that Kendrick died from positional asphyxia, a condition in which a person's body position interferes with normal breathing and blood circulation. Medical examiners explained that remaining inverted for an extended period could
cause blood to pool toward the head, eventually leading to loss of consciousness and death. To investigators, the physical evidence
at the scene, including the location of the shoes and Kendrick's position inside the mat, was consistent with that conclusion. But almost immediately, questions emerged from outside the investigation. Kendrick's family struggled to accept that an athletic teenager could become trapped in such a manner without anyone hearing cries for help or noticing anything unusual in a school
filled with Hispanic students and staff. They also questioned whether the official reconstruction had fully accounted for all available evidence.
Their concerns prompted them to seek an independent autopsy, hoping it would provide additional clarity about what had happened. The second autopsy, commissioned by the family and conducted by an independent forensic pathologist, reached a different conclusion regarding Kendrick's injuries. The pathologist reported findings that raised concerns about possible trauma and questioned whether the death was truly accidental.
Those differing medical opinions quickly became the subject of intense public debate, while the official medical examiner maintained that
the original conclusion of accidental positional asphyxia remains supported by the evidence. The conflicting interpretations fueled widespread speculation and media coverage. As the story spread across the country, television networks, newspapers, online forums, and social media platforms began examining every detail of the case. Millions of people watched videos analyzing surveillance footage frame by frame. Internet users compared photographs, discussed forensic reports, and proposed countless theories about what might have occurred inside the gymnasium. Some theories aligned with the official findings, while others suggested the possibility of foul play. Many of those theories, however, were
never substantiated by investigators. Law enforcement agencies repeatedly stated that they found no evidence sufficient to support criminal charges.
Despite those statements, public skepticism continued to grow. Another development added even more controversy. During the funeral, as additional forensic information became publicly available, it prompted renewed discussion and raised further questions about the official findings. Replaced with newspaper, a practice that shocked many people unfamiliar with certain post-autopsy restoration procedures. The revelation sparked widespread outrage
and fueled additional speculation online. Officials later explained that Kendrick's organs had been removed during the autopsy process and
were retained as part of the forensic examination before the body was released to the funeral home, according to statements from investigators and others involved. The use of filler material during body preparation can occur after organs have been removed, though the circumstances surrounding this case drew intense public scrutiny and criticism. Even so, the discovery further deepened
the family's distrust of the investigation. As public attention intensified, investigators from multiple agencies reviewed the evidence. The case
was examined not only by local authorities but also received reviews involving state and federal officials. Each review considered
the available physical evidence, witness interviews, surveillance footage, forensic reports, and investigative findings. Despite the additional scrutiny, officials ultimately
stated that they did not find sufficient evidence to conclude that Kendrick's death resulted from a homicide. The death
certificate continued to list the manner of death as accidental. For Kendrick's family, however, those conclusions did little to
ease their concerns. They continued advocating for additional investigations, arguing that important questions remained unresolved. Over time, the case became increasingly entangled in lawsuits and public accusations. Several individuals who had been publicly linked to unsupported allegations denied any involvement, and some pursued legal action over defamatory claims. Courts would later address a number of these disputes,
underscoring the importance of distinguishing allegations circulating online from evidence established in court or by investigators.
As the years passed, the Kendrick Johnson case evolved into something larger than a single investigation. It became a national conversation about transparency,
forensic science, public trust in law enforcement, and the influence of social media on high-profile cases. Every newly released
document, photograph, or interview reignited debate. Supporters of the official findings argued that the physical evidence consistently pointed toward
a tragic accident. Others remained convinced that critical questions had never been satisfactorily answered. Between those two perspectives lay
a complicated reality, a grieving family seeking answers, investigators standing by their conclusions, independent experts offering differing interpretations,
and a diverse public trying to make sense of a case in which certainty remained elusive. Yet the story was far
from over. Kendrick Johnson's parents refused to let the case fade from public memory. They continued pressing for additional reviews, filing legal actions, speaking with journalists, and appealing to anyone willing to re-examine the evidence. Their persistence ensured that, years after Kendrick's death, the case remained in headlines and documentaries across America. Whether viewed as a tragic accident,
an investigation marked by lingering questions, or a symbol of broader concerns about accountability and public confidence, the death
of Kendrick Johnson had become one of the most discussed and emotionally charged cases of the 21st century. But
perhaps the most powerful chapter of the story was still unfolding. Not inside a courtroom or a forensic laboratory, but
in the unwavering determination of a family who believed their search for answers was not yet over. For years after Kendrick Johnson's death, his parents refused to allow his story to disappear from the national conversation. While many investigations gradually fade from public memory, the Johnson family continued speaking to journalists, attending community events, organizing rallies, and
asking one question they believed had never been fully answered: what really happened to Kendrick? Their determination transformed a
local tragedy into a national symbol of a family's search for answers. Every anniversary of Kendrick's death renewed public interest, with supporters gathering in Valdosta and across the country to honor his memory and call for additional reviews of the evidence. To them, the fight was never simply about reopening a case. It was about ensuring that every possible question had been explored. Investigators, however, maintained that they had done exactly that. Over the years, the case was reviewed multiple times by local, state, and federal authorities.
Officials revisited witness statements, analyzed surveillance footage, examined forensic evidence, and evaluated information that emerged after the initial investigation.
Despite these additional reviews, authorities repeatedly stated that they did not uncover sufficient evidence to support criminal charges or to change the official determination that Kendrick's death was accidental. Those conclusions did little to satisfy the Johnson family, whose concerns remained unchanged. They continued to believe that important questions had not been adequately addressed, while investigators stood by the findings they believed were supported by the available evidence.
The divide between those two perspectives became one of the defining features of the case. As public interest continued
to grow, social media became one of the most influential forces shaping the conversation. Millions of people encountered the
Kendrick Johnson case through YouTube documentaries, Facebook groups, podcasts, online forums, and TikTok videos. Some creators carefully distinguished between
verified facts, disputed claims, and speculation. Others presented theories with far less caution, sometimes treating allegations as though they had already been proven. As a result, the internet became flooded with conflicting narratives. Some viewers became convinced that Kendrick had been the victim of foul play, while others believed the available evidence continued to support the official
findings. This phenomenon demonstrated both the power and the danger of modern digital media. Information could spread faster than
ever before, but so could misinformation. For many Americans following the case online, separating documented evidence from internet speculation became increasingly difficult. The controversy also led to years of civil litigation. Individuals who had been publicly accused without criminal charges consistently denied any involvement in Kendrick's death, and several pursued legal action over defamatory allegations. Courts considered
numerous claims connected to the public accusations, illustrating another important dimension of high-profile cases. While public opinion often develops
quickly, legal proceedings require evidence that can withstand judicial scrutiny. These lawsuits further complicated an already emotionally charged situation,
adding another layer to a case that had already become one of the most debated death investigations in recent.
Beyond the legal battles and public controversy, there remained the deeply personal story of a young man whose life ended far too soon. Friends remembered Kendrick as someone who loved sports, enjoyed making people laugh, and looked forward to graduation and the opportunities that lie ahead. His family remembered birthdays that would never be celebrated together,
holidays marked by an empty chair, and milestones forever left unfinished. Behind every headline, every forensic report, every courtroom,
and every online debate was the loss of a 17-year-old whose future disappeared in a single afternoon.
Regardless of where people stood on the conclusions of the investigation, few disputed the profound tragedy of that loss. The
Kendrick Johnson case also forced broader conversations throughout the United States about forensic science, investigative transparency, and public confidence
in official institutions. It highlighted how different experts can sometimes interpret the same evidence in different ways, and how
those differences can shape public perception for years. It also demonstrated the enormous influence of documentaries, podcasts,
and social media in keeping unsolved or disputed cases alive long after traditional news coverage has ended. In previous generations,
many investigations faded from national attention within months. Today, digital platforms allow cases like Kendrick's to be revisited repeatedly by new audiences, each bringing fresh questions, new analysis, and renewed debate. More than a decade has now passed since Kendrick Johnson entered his high school for what should have been an ordinary day. Students who once walked those same hallways have grown into adults, Teachers have retired, new classes have graduated, yet the questions surrounding that January afternoon continue to echo far beyond the walls of the old gymnasium. Every new documentary, every investigative podcast, and every anniversary reminds the public that this case still occupies a unique place in America's true crime landscape. Not because everyone agrees on what happened, but because so many people continue to disagree. In the end, two realities exist side by side.
One is the official conclusion reached after multiple investigations: that Kendrick Johnson died in a tragic
accident caused by positional asphyxia after becoming trapped inside a rolled wrestling mat while attempting to retrieve his shoes.
The other is the enduring belief held by his family and many supporters that the evidence leaves important questions unresolved,
and that further scrutiny remains warranted. Those positions have coexisted for years, and despite extensive reviews, neither has erased the other from public discussion.
Perhaps that is why the Kendrick Johnson case continues to fascinate, disturb, and divide audiences across America.
It is not simply a mystery about a single day in January 2013. It is a story about grief, uncertainty. It reminds us that investigations are judged not only by the conclusions they reach, but also by the confidence the public places in the process itself. When trust is questioned, debates can endure for generations. As the lights of the old gymnasium fade into memory, and the voices of investigators, attorneys, journalists, and internet commentators slowly fall silent, one truth remains beyond dispute.
The case centered on a 17-year-old whose story ended unexpectedly, leaving behind a family that continues to seek answers.
Whether history ultimately remembers the case as a heartbreaking accident, an investigation that inspired lasting public skepticism, whether viewed as one of the nation's most debated investigations, or simply as a story filled with unanswered questions,
whose absence forever changed the lives of those who loved him. And perhaps the most haunting question is not whether every mystery can be solved,
but whether every family can ever truly find peace when they believe there are still questions left unanswered.